I grew up in a family that wasn't really hands-on or a working tradesman family. My dad was in sales. He worked for Western Southern Life Insurance, and pretty much when we had something repaired around the house, we called somebody to do it. So I was never really growing up as a hands-on person. It wasn't that I didn't like to work. I did work, but it wasn't where I was a repairman or had any inclination that I would ever do that. I attended Northern Kentucky University and got a degree in business management, and fully expected that I'd be going to work for Procter & Gamble, Fifth Third Bank, or something like that. Really didn't know. I had some inclinations that I'd like to maybe be in my own business someday, but had no idea what that might be. So when I graduated from Northern, I started looking for a job, and I had a few interviews and didn't get a job right away. And one day I was in the kitchen opening the mail, and my dad happened to be standing there, and I had received a letter from Northern Kentucky University from their Career Center, and it was about a job with a plumbing contractor in Fort Thomas. And I wadded it up and threw it in the trash. And my dad happened to be there, and he said, "What was that?" And I said, "Oh, some plumber down in Fort Thomas is looking for a management trainee." And he said, "Well, why don't you go talk to him?" And I said, "I don't know anything about plumbing. How in the world would that ever work?" And he said, "Hey, you got anything better to do? All you're doing is sitting around here by the swimming pool all day. You got time to go down there and talk to him." He took a liking to me, and he hired me as a management trainee and basically teaching me to do estimating for the company. And within a few weeks, he had me bidding pretty large commercial jobs. At first, when I started bidding, I was naturally being careful, and I was high on a lot of my bids. And then as I started getting more confident, I started getting closer on the bids. But I was bidding Fairfield High School for the Fairfield Board of Education, and they would open those bids publicly right in front of you. So as they opened the bids, everybody's bid was in the $550,000 range, and mine was $350,000. I was $200,000 low.
So that's a lot of pressure. They're opening the bids right in front of you.
It's a lot of pressure, especially for a 22-year-old who really doesn't know what he's doing. So after the bid opening, I called my boss, Dick, the owner, and I said, "Dick, we're low bidder, but we're way low." And he says, "How low are we?" And I said, "A couple $100,000. And there was a long pause on his side of the phone, and he said, "Come on back, we're bankrupt." So I hopped in my company vehicle and I headed for home, and you can imagine how I felt coming back to the office that day. And fortunately, he had a relationship with the engineers and the architects, and you are bonded to do those jobs. They could have forced us to do those jobs, but he had a relationship with them and was able to get us out of that. And I was aware that he had to do some cutbacks. So I had been there about a year, and he came into my office and had to sit down and talk with me, and I knew something was up, and I just thought I was going to get laid off. And as it turned out, he asked me, he said, "Barry, do you think you could do the estimating and run the service department?" He said, "I'm thinking about letting the service manager go if you think you could handle both these things." And of course, that sounded great to me rather than losing my job. Susan and I were at that point probably just getting ready to get married. We were starting to build a home, and so, I had to have a job.
Tell us the story about how that turned into you working in the field.
Well, he started a company, enlisted his wife as the owner. Louise, his wife, was the owner, and he named it the Jolly Company and asked me if I would run it. Of course, I had never worked in the field, didn't know anything about working in the field. So we hired a journeyman plumber, and I worked with the journeyman plumber in the field, and then in the evenings I would do the paperwork and the books. And so we're going into people's homes. I'm the helper, and at 22, 23 years old, honestly, I looked like I was about 17. So people, they're talking to the plumber thinking that they're talking to the owner, but I'm the helper is the owner. I mean, it was a really, really unusual situation. Finally their gaze would have to come over to me and start talking about that. So we did that for a year. And, in the service business in plumbing, you kind of do a lot of the same things over and over again. And as it turned out, I was a pretty quick learner at that kind of thing. And I learned how to install faucets and water heaters. Did a lot of that, and so after a year, I decided that I wanted to go into my own business, and that's when we started. And originally, the Jolly Plumbing was called Barry Jolly Plumbing. Of course, I started out. I had to buy a truck, and I had to get money, so I didn't have any money. Susan and I were building a home, and in fact, we had just gotten it done. I had no equity in the house, and very little money. So I thought, well, I'll just go up to my local bank. I knew the president. He was a great friend of my dad's. And I thought, I need about $15,000. I'll just go up and he'll loan it to me. So I sat down and he said, Barry, he said, I'd love to loan you the money, but do you have any collateral, or what are you going to put up for it? You're starting a business. And I said, I don't have much. I got a set of golf clubs and that's about it. And he said, well, I'm not going to be able to do that. Do you think your father would sign a note for you, sign the loan? And I said, oh, I think he would. So my dad certainly did. And so I got a loan for $15,000. The payment was $156 a month. And I went and I bought a truck, and I paid $5,000 for the truck, paid $5,000 for some tools, and I kept $5,000 just to help me get started. And once I got those tools in that truck, I started, and I was never not busy a day.